And what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 172 of Weighing In. I'm Marcus Hoehn, joined as always and as usual via the magic of the internet by Dave Mirikitani. And we also have a very special guest with us today, a special guest co-host, which I don't know if we've officially named anyone that. We've had guests who we've interviewed, but we haven't bestowed the prestigious title of guest co-host. So we got Maryland Terps head coach Alex Clemsen, and we are all in the same state. We're all in Missouri and in the state of quarantine, I guess.
I need to get a new hash, like, our names underneath each other's, and Clemsen says Turtle Power. I need to get one that says like Panda Power or something like that.
Yes, you do. You should get shirts with Panda Power.
How you doing, Alex?
I'm awesome, guys. Family's healthy. My team's doing well. All things considered, couldn't be better.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, Marcus and I were talking, and there's a lot of news going on right now, like Thomas Gilman, Daniel Dennis, Jack Mueller, Nick Piccinini. But Marcus and I wanted to have you on for the whole show, but really, we've been talking to you offline just about sort of the state of the NCAA. Obviously, you're at Maryland, which is a Big Ten program, and you are involved in decision-making at a different level than a lot of our listeners, and a lot of us. And so I think your perspective on, and I think you and me talked about this, like it's different whether or not, whatever your politics are, your perspective on how the shutdown is going to affect college athletics and how other sports being able to have seasons are going to be able to impact wrestling. So I kind of wanted to start there. I know Marcus and I got some questions, but kind of wanted to, start that off and give you the floor on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're in like unprecedented times. You think about the last time championships were canceled. I think it was World War II. So, we're just in uncharted waters. And I think the term that I keep hearing from everybody is just how fluid the situation is. It changes. I mean, if not daily, sometimes hourly. And, I'll get updates from people. I'll go to bed. I'll wake up. It's different. I'll have a call at 9 a.m. The business, we've gone in a slightly different direction. And, times of uncertainty, I think, always can create chaos, but I think the best leaders kind of emerge and stabilize things. And I think you're starting to see that, not just in wrestling, but across the country, not just in sports, but in our everyday world. I know I'm thankful that our leader, Damon Evans, who was a college athlete himself, was an All-American linebacker at Georgia. I think if anybody kind of understands how to stabilize an athletic department or kids in general that are, that got to have a lot of questions as a guy who was in those shoes himself. And so I feel really fortunate and blessed to have that kind of rock for a leader in our department. But yeah, we need college football. We need college basketball. The hit that departments have already taken with the loss of the NCAA basketball tournament revenue is real. I think the economy that people are feeling right now, just everyday Americans, not just billionaires. Billionaires definitely are getting hit right now, but I think, I'm not a billionaire, but not speak out of turn, but billionaires probably can insulate themselves a little bit better than the blue collar, 2-income family that's got 3 kids. And so that's what drives America, right? It's the middle class, and the middle class is probably taking a really hard hit right now. And, families across the country are reeling, and hopefully we'll come out of this sooner than later and safe in a safe fashion, and we'll get back to business. But everybody's just hurt right now. And so
Can you tell us a little bit specifically about what the impact of the NCAA basketball tournament, like what was the expected revenue, what was the received revenue, and just quickly, sort of a shout out to Marcus and I, we're both small business owners. And so, when you're talking about the difference between, there's hundredaires, there's thousandaires, there's millionaires, and there's billionaires. And we service a lot of folks that are hundredaires and thousandaires. But small business and business owners are what we're the engine of this country. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you some of the numbers I have. I pulled up some notes that I took.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
The Big Ten, like the Big Ten network, was the hit we took from them, I guess, is $2 million for the end of the year Big Ten network revenues. We took hits on student fees. We took hits on just all, different refunds that we had to do with the college. But I don't have the NCAA money. Oh, I do $2 million per qualified institution. So you look at that, 2 million, and then another little bit of money from the Big Ten, and then money from from the school. Our athletic department itself is, we're in a $5 to $8 million hit. So you're looking at, most Power 5 institutions that had teams qualifying for the NCAA basketball tournament. It's probably somewhere in that neighborhood.
The numbers I had heard were like 900 million was expected from the basketball tournament on the scale. And there's like around 200 to 250 is what was received instead. So you're talking about ballpark $700 million difference spread out over God knows how many schools, but you can figure out zeros pretty quickly there.
Yeah, I think it's just the 68 schools that make the field, isn't it?
Yeah, but even that, I mean, you're talking about it's 10 million a school, Yeah.
Exactly. So I know it's not good, but I guess people's lives, you can't really put a price on it, and so we made a decision as a country to, go for the greater good, and I'm thankful we did. My wife's asthmatic, my son's asthmatic. They probably fall in the characterization of somebody that's more at risk. So we've taken some stronger measures, probably as even a family, because of that.
I think that's an interesting point, what you were saying about, not putting a price on human life. And when we say it, and a lot of times when we say it like that, it sounds like, we definitely, it's not something that makes us very comfortable to say something like that. But at the same time, if we stop and recognize that at some point we're probably going to have to do that, and we do that all the time with life insurance policies, right now, as far as what we decide that somebody's life is worth at different age based on their lifestyle and things like that and their income. But it's definitely not a comfortable topic or conversation to have to make. But I feel like at some point, you're talking about these millions of dollars that are at stake and that have been, I don't like to say lost, because I feel like this is a very unusual situation. I think that as far as, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds with economics, and Dave probably would talk circles around me in economics, but it just feels like this is a lot different than something that, some sort of like the housing bubble collapse or something like that. It seems like it's very superficial, that it's going to take a while to get back, but I think it's going to happen a lot faster than it has in other times that we've gone this kind of direction. But like you said, Coach Clemsen, it's unprecedented. So it's really hard to make anybody that speculates or makes any kind of model or guess is just that. It's a guess, because we have no idea what we're dealing with right now. I mean, again, to piggyback on the point you made earlier, with every day, if not every few hours, we're getting new information, new direction. It's just going to continue to develop, and it's a very unfortunate situation. But like I keep saying to all of our kids at practices, we're the people that are built for this. We're always talking about adversity and finding a way and persevering, and not, I always kind of just default to worst case scenario. Like, am I still alive? Okay, then we're good. Like, we're good. Like, no matter how bad things get, if I'm still alive, I'm still kicking. If I can still, stay in my house right now. And I know some people won't be able to at some point, but it sounds like we're making the measures to try to get everybody that we can the help that they need. So very unusual situation, but
Alex, talk a little bit, if you would. And Marcus, I love that saying, that we're built. That I saw both Alex and I nodding as soon as you said that statement, because, I think we've all talked about this, that even worse wrestlers, we have more respect for guys that wrestled and stuck a season out than somebody that never did it and just chirped about it. So, and sometimes those guys had to be the toughest guys because they got the hell beat out of them every day. Alex, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about the economic impact of football. I'll just go real broad stroke. Football programs generally are the money earners, and they support other sports, non-revenue sports. Wrestling is a loss leader in almost every school in the country.
No, every school.
Okay, every school. So what would happen if there was no college football season this year?
Football is obviously the biggest economic driver of college athletics, and then I would say it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, economic driver of most institutions. When you think about, like, people come back and do giving events and have alumni functions and tailgates and just engagement. Athletics is the front porch of an institution, and football is 90% of that front porch. So I'm not sure exactly what would happen to every institution. I don't think most ADs know, to be honest. But from what I understand from people kind of, behind the scenes and in the know, it's not good. And it wouldn't be good for football. It wouldn't be good for basketball. I mean, we're talking, cataclysmic changes to the landscape, most likely. And that's really unfortunate that we're built on this kind of a model. But it's the race that we're in. You look at stadiums being built and practice facilities being erected and coaching salaries being paid and expenses and travel and food and gear. And it's the world we live in. That's college athletics today. It's a big business. But I have a chance to say that the forecast would be very bleak, that you would see a much different model in college athletics in terms of how we operate and what sports are offered. And it would be good. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that people may forget is, like, I don't think we would, but like in general, like if you watch something on TV, like you record something, you can just fast forward through the commercials. Like a sports game, like a football game, a wrestling match, if it's on BTN, or a baseball game or whatever, you can't wait to watch it later because everybody's talking about it on social media. It's on the news. And so because of that, you can't even fast forward through the advertising. So they can charge a lot more for the advertising. And that's a huge chunk of it. One of my favorite things in the world is when people say it ain't about the money. It's always about the money. Like people are either just being honest or disingenuous.
I mean, I've heard, right now I think they're looking at different options for college football. One is, just business as usual. Second would be a shortened season, condensed season. You lose the non-conference games maybe. And that's probably a hit for the Power 5 schools. But I think that's a bigger hit for the mid-major schools that actually take those paydays. You think about being at Mizzou, I always think about like the MAC. You think about like a MAC team like Miami of Ohio. We won't even use a wrestling school, right? I don't even want to go there. So we use a school without wrestling. But like Miami of Ohio every year plays probably 2 Power 5 games to start their season. Their payouts are, $1 to $2 million on each one of those games. If a team like Miami of Ohio loses $3 to $4 million revenue generator at the start of their season, it would not be good for an athletic department like that. And God forbid if there's a Miami of Ohio fan out there watching, don't shoot me, right? I'm using scenarios.
Example, yeah.
It could be school X, right? But sure. It'd be bad. And so they've talked about that. And then they've also talked about, playing games in empty stadiums. And that's about those. That might be weird, but I think it does 2 things, right? And the most important one of those things, it gives the kids normalcy. I just know for my kids, my athletes, I'm getting texts every day like, Coach, when can we get back to school? Coach, when are we going to get back to the room? Coach, when do we get the team? When can we be a team again? Our kids are like craving structure. They're craving social interaction on a deeper level. They're, they want to get back to status quo just because they miss it and they long for it. I think that's human nature. So I think it would give the kids normalcy. And then the second thing is it would give the country some normalcy, right? College athletics in general, college football, probably more than anything, is part of the fabric of America right now. So that would be great. You think about, even if we were in some sort of still quarantine or isolation or whatever you want to look at it as, people would still be getting in, watching games, and you might have a blue TV. The thing is it would probably generate more advertising revenue, because think about the viewership, right? We've got nothing else to do. We'd be watching sports. So I think the ripple effect then is we, as for academic institutions and athletic programs, we would recapture some of that revenue. And the stadium might be empty, but the stadium is a much smaller piece to the pie of the revenue stream in college athletics. It's the network deals. It's the TV advertising dollars. It's the, for example, us in the Big Ten network, and all the other, primetime games and the college football playoff and et cetera. So I'm hoping, for more reasons than just money, where we have college football. It's more the normalcy, and what I think it would do for the, just the fabric of our country.
Hey, Alex, I got a piggyback follow-up two-part kind of question here. Well, first a comment. So I think you're absolutely right about the normalcy and the structure. And that's, I can tell one thing, and we kind of did this just because it worked out easier, but I found it to be very beneficial, is we're doing these online classes, and we're doing our classes at basically the same time we were having practice. So we're trying to correlate that in their mind of that structure, like you're saying, and that normalcy. And I think that's really, really important. That's a great point. Going back real quick. So something that I was kind of reading about today that I connected these two ideas is football is the Amazon of college sports. And what he was saying was basically he took a bunch of money and put it in Amazon because he's like, I know Amazon's not going to fail, because if Amazon fails, then that's not an economy that I want to live in. Like things are going to be way, way worse than, you're not even going to be worried about Amazon failing if Amazon fails. Like things are going to be really, really bad at that point. So I guess kind of with where I took that was like, you alluded to some changes to the landscape. I was wondering what you think will be kind of permanent and what will be kind of like phased out. Like what's some things that, and you've kind of already touched on some of them. Like I would assume stadiums being empty is not a permanent thing, right? Like that's a, hey, maybe this season type thing, but going forward, that's not going to be a permanent change. What do you see as some things that may be permanent changes and versus some things that are going to be kind of phased out in the next year as we get past this, hopefully, ideally?
I mean, I think some permanent changes would be like us all probably being more mindful of washing our hands, right? Like my wife's, she went to school to be an RN and was in the nursing field for a few years before we started our family. And she is always yelling at me to wash my hands. And I always kind of like roll my eyes at her. And I probably did it like 1 out of 10 times per her request, outside of, like dinner time, but it's like, hey, we gotta wash our hands more. And they're talking about possibly like the handshake dying, right? Like us not shaking hands anymore. I hope that's not the case, right?
I'm okay with the fist bump.
Yeah, maybe, like I said, maybe we'll come up with something different, right? Like, maybe, more along Dave's heritage, a nod or a bow of respect, something like that to acknowledge each other. But it's hard to tell. I think we're probably going to see more online class offerings. That was something that was kind of being instituted and capitalized on. You think about what, Kyle Snyder was able to do with the travel to Russia and different trips and things. And he was able to do that because he was an online student. But we're probably going to see more online offerings. I think some of our kids are excelling in the online atmosphere and like it better. I think schools are going to see that you can need less infrastructure and, you can do a bigger professor to student ratio, so you can probably save some costs. I think we're probably going to see some of the grandiose of college athletics be reeled back in, and probably get back to some more responsible spending in some different areas, in terms of salary increases, in terms of travel expenditures, and unnecessary gear, and some of the silliness that goes on in college athletics. I mean, I think all those things are great, but they're not needed, right? I mean, we can have college athletics without all those things. My wife keeps making cameos. She won't get on for me though.
She's the best looking of all of us. You might as well get her on there.
But so I think we'll probably see some of those things. I just did my budget for next year, and they asked me just to like really be mindful of what do I think is essential and non-essential, and then lay out some cases for some of the non-essential things and why I think they prop up the essential things. I just think we're going to operate better, leaner and meaner, and you might see us really strengthen our position if it goes back to my opening comment on like how strong I think our AD is. He's really good, and there's other ADs out there that are phenomenal as well, that I think at the parts that learn to kind of capitalize and operate in this time period could really strengthen themselves and lay a much deeper foundation going forward. So those are probably some of the things. I think you might see some stadiums operate not at full capacity, like they'll open it up, but maybe we'll have lesser capacity. I know they talked about that this spring with the basketball tournament going forward, and with the wrestling tournament, maybe not allowing so many people into the venue. You may see some of that go on, but I hope that it doesn't go deeper than that. I hope that we don't look at lost programs. I mean, we saw one in wrestling recently with Old Dominion. There's been some rumor out there that other programs are in trouble, and credit to those ADs who stepped up and said no, that isn't true. I think that's awesome. Those guys did that. But every day, I get an email that kind of details what's going on in the NCAA, and saw a West tennis program from a colleague that their swimming and diving is in trouble, and I hope that's not the answer. That you see other athletic departments do what Iowa State did, where coaches took a 1-year pay cut, or Wyoming's AD what he did with giving back his salary. I'd hope you'd see those things, and then we get back to operating more normal in the future. I hope it's short-term sacrifices.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think in general, everyone's looking. You guys have both said this about structure. Like Marcus talked about running his practice at the same time every day. Alex, you've talked about your athletes reaching out to you every day, and I think I've always heard that champions crave structure. That a person that I think I'm the oldest of the three of us. So like, if you guys came and said, "What are we going to do today?" I'm like, "I don't know, guys. Whatever you want." You wouldn't show up for very long. You're going to find somebody that actually tells you what to do, and you believe that the advice or structure they're giving you is beneficial. So, I think the other thing that's kind of the opposite of that is socially, when we go out, like two guys don't go, "Hey, you just want to have dinner and catch up?" Where I was like, "Hey, you want to go? We'll go grab a bite. We'll watch the game. We'll watch the fight. We'll watch whatever." Guys sit like this. Women can face each other and just have dinner. Guys will watch a TV. We might not even hardly any attention. We just start talking, but it's our social, how we get together. And so, I think when that does happen, I was talking to somebody, if this stuff all comes back in the fall, there's going to be 9 sports going on at once. Sports bars are going to make all their money back, in 4 months. So
yeah, I think that's good to kind of point to what Marcus was talking about, how like he thinks like, we can come back pretty quick maybe than we did from like the housing recession. I think that's true in some regards, as long as this doesn't go too deep and we don't see unemployment go too much farther, and people aren't, the death toll doesn't really spike. People aren't wanting to go back too much, and they get timid. But I think you're right. We have the potential to do that. And I've just seen, like, one of my best friends in the world owns a great restaurant here in Columbia, and
give him a shout out. Give D Rose a shout out.
Yeah, man. My buddy David Rowe owns D Rose. It's awesome food, and him and his wife, you talk about being a part of a community and the fabric, just like what they do for youth programs and just different events and organizations with the sponsorships and the free catering. And I mean, it's crazy what he does. He's maybe the most generous person I know. And the guy's only like 40 and he's got a young family and he's still that generous. It's super impressed by him. But what the community has done, like in turn with keeping up the carry-out orders and the to-go orders and the delivery orders, I talk to him, maybe not every day, but pretty close to every day we talk. And I've checked in with him, how are things going? Just what the community has done to step up and the catering opportunities that he's had at the hospital and different organizations that are used to. I think, one of the things that makes America really special is how we all pull together and we find a way to like get through things. And, it makes you proud, right? So I think we have a chance to definitely rebound faster as long as we don't go down a rabbit hole because of that.
Sure. We're going to switch subjects. I'm going to just hit a couple of things that have happened. One is about a potential student athlete, so I know you can't comment on that, Alex. And then we're going to close with kind of what's going on up at Hawkeye Wrestling Club. But Victor Voinovich, a big recruit out of Ohio, is verbally committed to Oklahoma State, so congratulations to the Cowboys and him. Nick Piccinini, who was on with Marcus and I a couple of weeks ago. And it's interesting, Marcus, because you could kind of tell his brain was on to the next thing. He announced he's going to be going in MMA, training out with DC and Sean Bunch and Kyle Crutchburn, Jacoby Smith, and Deron Wynn, who wrestled for me. All those guys out there training together and coaching together at Gilroy. Daryl Thomas, who was at Old Dominion. I actually did a podcast with him. We saved that podcast because the Frank Molinaro news came out, so that one's going to come out this week. I just texted him, and he officially confirmed he's on the Campbell coaching staff now. So
that's awesome. Hey, I don't mean to cut you off, Congrats. Dave, but I've known DT a little while, and he is top-notch cat, really great dude. Where he's at in his personal life with a young family and stuff, I couldn't be happier for him. And Campbell got a hell of a assistant coach there. So shout out to Scotty Sentes. He's put together a really nice staff for a young head coach, and Mahalik and DT, two of the really good guys in our world. So really happy for Campbell. I know that the loss of Colot was probably a little bit of a sting or a hurt, but man, what Sentes has been able to do with his staff, I think solidifying things down there is really good for Campbell, which is good for NCAA wrestling. And I like both those guys, but really happy for DT. He's somebody that I really enjoy acting with. So sorry to cut you off.
No, for sure. Daryl Thomas is like Marcus Hoehn. If you don't like those guys, the problem was with you, not with them.
Yes.
I appreciate you lying on my behalf, Dave.
No, for sure, man. I told Clemsen this. Like, I've been making weight every week. I usually make my weight on Tuesday. I make my weight before I see Marcus because no matter how grumpy I am, I always leave with a smile.
That's right.
So, one other piece of news, Jack Mueller has joined the NYC RTC. He's had a long-standing relationship with Kendall Cross, so he'll be training out there with him. Obviously, we're seeing some moves. Now we're literally 12 months out from the Olympic trials as opposed to they should have happened a couple weeks ago. And so the big news is coming out of Iowa City. Thomas Gilman and Nittany Lion Wrestling Club and Daniel Dennis is the new Hawkeye Wrestling Club coach. Mark Perry has left. The rumor is Mark Perry's going somewhere else, but we're not going to, we don't have validation. I contacted people at Arizona State and other schools that he's been rumored to go to, and nothing's official. So we're not going to comment about where he might go at all. But Daniel Dennis was named as the Hawkeye Wrestling Club coach, Thomas Gilman to Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. Marcus, what are your thoughts on those two things?
Well, number one, it's a little hard to have as much insight, I guess, as normal, just because I'm in way less contact with people than I normally. I mean, right now I would have normally been, I'm trying to think of all the youth state, which I know seems like silly, but you got a bunch of guys in Missouri that know a lot and have kids that wrestle in Division I. So just talking to a lot of those guys at youth state. We would have had, I'm trying to think of all the things.
Freestyle State.
Freestyle State, freestyle tournament started locally. I guess folk style nationals, all of those places where I would have caught up on a lot of details and news and stuff. So it's a little hard to have, I guess, more of a feel of what's really going on. So it's a lot more, feels like outside looking in right now, which it normally is, but even more so now. And I guess to me, the questions I have is, you just kind of wonder, like, man, this was like the best season I think that Iowa has had in a really, really long time, as far as consistently having good guys at every single weight performing at a high level, and, not really many letdowns or dips. And then now at the end of the year, we see a bunch of changes happening. So I'm not sure. It's hard to say whether it's good or bad, but only time will tell. But I don't know. I just wonder about some of those shakeups without getting too much into talking about somebody behind their back, I guess.
If they're playing by the rules, right, Mark shouldn't have too much contact with college athletes. So, and Daniel shouldn't either. So both those guys should be more interacting with the senior level guys, and then, getting the college kids periodically for, in the off season, whatever. So I don't know how much it affects. I think Tom and Terry, are definitely the captains of that ship, and with Ryan. And I know I listened to Tom's interview and Terry's interview recently on some other outlets, and I was impressed by both of what, how they praised the other guys on their staff, and kind of, they feel good about the direction they're going. And Iowa's a machine, right? I mean, they got a lot of good things there. So not to discredit Mark, I think Mark's a good coach, and obviously he knows a lot about wrestling. He came out of the womb wrestling. So, but
the funny Mark Perry Jr. story before we go into this part was I had him on, and he told me that, for people that don't know, the Perrys and the Smiths, they're all related. They, I had Mark and Chris on at various points on the podcast. Mark did that for a while. His mom used to whoop everybody like when they would have backyard wrestling. And that's Kathy, who's John's older sister. So
I've heard that too.
I'm gonna promote myself here. Well, not myself, but a product. All right, so I just put out a product today. I was thinking outside the box of ways to have income for our business. Like, what can we do right now that people would pay for? So I made a shirt. It's a Corona version shirt. So it says, what does it say? 2020 Corona season, living room wrestling undisputed champion.
Kathy Perry was the undisputed living room champion in a household where that actually means something.
Yeah. One brother's got 6 gold medals, and the other brother was the first to win 4 titles. So.
I'll take that's like the greatest living room title of all time. If that's promotion for women's wrestling, I don't know what it is. So to me, the interesting thing is that, like, when you think about the timing, like, obviously, Gilman was thinking about doing this. It would be interesting to see how he would have performed at the trials. He performed great at, qualified the weight at the Pan Ams. That was that situation where nobody wrestled in the finals. They either got first or second. Some of the wrestlers got first, some of them got second, but nobody wrestled because top 2 qualified. No reason to take any chances on injuries, no seedings, anything like that. Alex, you've talked about this. Marcus, you've talked about this. You guys are coaches. I coach. Improvement in learning is not linear. Like when coaches say, we got 1% better today. Well, sometimes you have to get 5% worse. Like if Alex has a great sweep single and I say, hey, you can't use your sweep single for 2 weeks in practice, guys are going to beat him or give him a harder time than he would have if he'd used a sweep single. So if Gilman's going to go to Nittany Lions / Penn State, I think the obvious things people think of, well, he may improve at scrambling. His attack rate may get up. His volume may be higher. He may get better at that head-heel series. I certainly think scrambles, those waterfall positions where he was with Fix, like he's going to probably theoretically might have a better or different feel for that. But he's not going to have a better feel for that or know where he is the first day, because you're going to get worse before you get better. The interesting thing about international wrestling is the schedule is so infrequent. You have a lot of time. You can come out of that and be better. Where like in a college season, if I wrestle Alex in a match and he puts 6 minutes and 30 seconds of riding time on me riding legs, and Marcus is my coach, when we work on getting out of legs on Monday, I'm probably not going to be better Tuesday. I have some ideas in my head, but it's not going to be till the next weekend when I pick down and we figure out if I actually learned anything or not. So,
Hey, Dave.
Alex, I know you can talk. Go ahead, Marcus. Go ahead.
I was just going to throw something in real quick that I thought was kind of funny because you said that Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, maybe his attack volume will go up when actually he needs to go to stall camp and learn when not to shoot.
Greg Warren. Greg's my guy. We went to high school together. So Greg was a mentor to me. Is probably frightening. So you're a guy that has an RTC. You're coaching against both these universities on a conference basis. I think what you said, how classy everybody was and how they've handled it, at least publicly, God only knows who was said behind closed doors, but the fact that everybody gave each other dap and credit and everything else. When you think about this, maybe from a big picture point of view, how do you think this helps America's chances at 57 kilos?
I don't know. Obviously Lee's going to be in the mix. And so having Gilman and Lee fighting each other every day maybe actually makes those two better. So maybe it hurts America. But then again, if those two guys weren't getting wrestle each other very often, if it was awkward for them or they were having, personal issues, I'm not saying they were, I'm just speculating. But they, possibly it doesn't help. It doesn't help them. But, if everybody then can get in their silo and get better and just focus on themselves, it could have a good thing. I know this, those three guys, Fix, Lee, and Gilman are all really good. So the fact that, they're all motivated and want, to be the guy, I think America's in good hands, whoever they send it that way. We haven't even mentioned a couple of the other guys that are pretty good as well. So I think this is like one of the golden eras of American wrestling right now.
Well, in the speculation realm, I feel like what you were saying, in my mind, complete speculation as well, right? Because I just got done saying as much just a few moments ago that I have no idea what's going on at Iowa. I don't know anyone there that I talked to, but basically when Gilman leaves, I look at two of the most obvious explanations would be one of which you just said, which is that I don't need to be in the same room as Lee anymore. And then the second one would be I'm super tight with Mark Perry. And if he's leaving, then I'm leaving. And
I've also heard that Gilman and Rutherford are like really, really good friends, like super close. So
yeah.
Thomas said that. He said that publicly, that they're close. It's an interesting thing. I think if we then transition to the next part of it, which is Daniel Dennis got named as the Hawkeye Wrestling Club coach. Dennis I was telling somebody this, I'm like, he was an Olympian, lost the first round. His guy got beat. He was out. But he probably fell out of the public limelight quicker than any other Olympian on the men's freestyle side in a long time. Because he was, he kind of made it out of nowhere, the Ramos Dennis situation, was very impressive at the trials. I think we were all there, but then, goes 0-1, which certainly I think all of us would love to have gone 0-1 at the Olympics, that still like amazing. So, all credit and respect, but then just kind of, you see him pop up on, on other websites and our website, but, not doing a lot of stuff publicly, coaching at a lower level, high school level, probably having a huge impact at that level. But he seems like a Iowa guy, like a guy that buys into the Iowa system, came through the Iowa system, was kind of a recruited walk-on out of Illinois, is a guy that seems like he got a lot out of his talent. People say that a lot, but a guy that, doesn't jump real high and run real fast, but would grind you out. And I think he's got credibility because, he made the Olympics. The crazy thing is most people, he'd be the best guy on the staff. He's still behind Tom and Terry in terms of world accomplishments, which is amazing. The other news that came out of that was there was speculation that the women's program was going to be cut or funding was going to be reduced or eliminated. And Andy Hamilton did an interview with Brands and got that documented that wasn't going to happen. So I think, that's really good news because there's a ton of women in that Hawkeye Wrestling Club that are at, top 1, 2, 3 on the ladder. So, Alex, maybe this is an interesting question for you. I think, you obviously have like the person from Maryland, Helen Maroulis, was the story of the 2016 Olympics. If you really understand not you, but if people understand what she did, who she beat. So obviously women's wrestling might have a little more attention in Maryland than it does in some other states. How important is it that Hawkeye is continuing to do what they're doing for the women's program?
I mean, I think it's important. Tom was one of the first coaches to kind of like really get behind fun or sport or have the women join the RTC at a super significant level. I mean, I think that's documented and probably got to give Tom a lot of credit for that. And so I know, listening to his public comments that he made, it's clear to him that he'd like to continue that support and that trajectory for the women's side of the sport. I think all of us need to recognize that the women are part of the future of our sport and probably make men's wrestling more viable. And so we should, be doing whatever we can to support them and welcome them and lift them up. Yeah, Helen's amazing. What she did, and she beat basically it was like the equivalency of like what Rulon did with beating Karelin,
Yeah.
Although Karelin was, on one shoulder and 40 years old or whatever. The gal, Helen beat still pretty close to her prime and healthy from what I understand. And I've gotten to inside Helen a little through John Morrison, who's in the area now. And, she seems to be back and firing and healthy. So that's good for the women's side too. So I think, women's wrestling's a huge part of where we need to go as a future for our sport. So it was definitely encouraging to hear Tom say that not only did he want to, prop him up, but he had the support to do so financially. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. I know some of those gals are pretty tied to Mark. And I'm sure where Mark goes is probably somewhat tied to what females he can bring with him or he can coach. I'm guessing that's part of the delay is that he's weighing his options to see, what RTC programs along with the college side and what mix is intertwined. People that I'm close to keep telling me he's headed out west, but we'll see, right? Nothing's bound.
Yeah. Well, it's, it's so interesting, Alex, you and I had talked because I think, we had talked about linking up at the Olympic trials and things like that. And, I had my 6 weeks scheduled out. I was going to do the Big 12s and then do our all Metro meet and then do the Minnesota Border Brawl and then do the NCAs and then breathe for a week and then go do the Olympic trial finals, and all of that changed. Marcus is, coaching kids to state titles and, you're taking guys, and by the way, we haven't said congratulations on getting 2 guys qualified as your first year, in Maryland. I mean, you got to walk before you run. It's a huge first step for you guys. And, I know it's disappointing they didn't get to wrestle, but it's a landmark. It's a step. It's something it's quantifiable proof that your guys are improving and that your process and your belief system works. So I haven't publicly congratulated you on that, but definitely big thanks for that, man.
Appreciate you.
For sure. Congratulations.
Yeah, for
Thanks,
sure.
Mark.
Doing good things. But I just think that in general, it's going to be interesting to see, maybe we'll get you on in like, a couple months, and talk to you again about like how the Olympic red shirt's going to play out. What's really interesting was Iowa zigged when everybody else zagged this year, like the Cornells and the Michigans and a couple other schools, they Olympic redshirted a bunch of guys. Iowa, Penn State had 2 guys wrestle where injuries played a big part. in who they had in their starting lineup. No Kassar, no Berge. Berge was kind of an unknown quantity, but certainly a very high prospect. Kassar was known. He's defending champ and beat a beast in Gable Stevenson twice. Was certainly going to be a 2-3 guy at worst. And instead, those two guys get injured in the freestyle season. Iowa plays it super close to the best. Spencer Lee wrestles one tournament, wins that tournament, no injuries. They can keep them out of Midlands for the most part. And they were a huge favorite going into the tournament. Obviously, it'd still have to be wrestled, but, I think 4 number 1 seeds or something like that. So it's going to be interesting next year when everyone sort of gets to reload. Marcus and I were talking about this. Doing the preseason rankings will be a hellacious project on my part.
Well, the interesting thing will be to see what happens. Do they give kids a second chance in Olympic red shirt again? And then who zigs and who zags, right? Who's like, hey, look, like we've committed scholarship dollars to you.
Yeah,
we need you to wrestle because we've got things down the pipeline, and that's there's a human side to everything and there's a business side to everything. And that I'm sure that has to be managed at some of those institutions you've talked about or you spoke about. So be interesting to see what the NCAA rules. I know that in our Big Ten head coaches meeting last that's why I couldn't make the call. I was on a 9-hour meeting with no breaks. It was like it was like sauna survivor workout. But that was one of the things that was brought up, and there were a couple coaches that were really interested to see that. So I'm sure there'll be some legislation at some point put out in the near future on how they're going to handle another Olympic red shirt. I'm super intrigued by that. On what they decide, and be interested to see the fallout from it. The other thing I'll say is a couple kids that have made teams lately have wrestled in the college season. You think about Zane and you think about Jaden and Snyder. Those guys didn't take Olympic red shirts. They wrestled, so I don't know how much of a benefit in a say what?
Back to Jordan Burroughs and Herbert too.
Yeah. So I don't know how much that matters. Ben made it the year after, right? In 08. Yep. So I just think so much of what we do again, that like structure, that consistency, and that room of just a good grind and constant development. I'm not sure that's not better anyways. So just because I've seen, I saw Jaden do it up close and personal. Yeah. I can only go off of what I know. So I've seen it work.
It's certainly like two sides of the coin, right? Like one side is, okay, well, we're just going to focus on freestyle skills and not have to worry about getting off on bottom. And you don't have to worry about, the edge of the mat that's different and all that. The other side of it is making weight 16 times, grinding every day, being tough, and a lot of the skills in folk style are transferable to freestyle. So it's it's an interesting quandary. I think it'll be, as the legislation comes out, like you said it right. Like just because somebody says you can Olympic redshirt doesn't mean these coaches are gonna let you Olympic redshirt again. Like, hey, we got Scally's already committed. These schools that are having big recruiting classes, like you've had good success recruiting. Well, if you had 4 guys that wanted to Olympic redshirt again, I'm not going to speak for you, but I would imagine that would be an economic dilemma on how you'd make that happen. And it's a hypothetical, but it would be, it'd be like in the NFL, you have to have a salary cap expert on how to get this thing all worked out. But that's essentially what it is. So
I don't envy that position, right? And then just how to deal with the emotional side of it too with your athlete. But those guys will have to figure it out and maybe see some fallout from it. I don't know. It'd be really intriguing.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll shut it down. Alex, first of all, thanks so much for coming on. I know you're heading to Maryland this weekend, so I want to wish you safe travels. Thank your wife for letting us steal an hour of your time. Marcus, the mustache is freaking epic.
I think Alex, you got disconnected when I was explaining that I trimmed my beard so that my mask would fit better if I had to go to the grocery store. And I got the mustache, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go show my wife my mustache. She hated it. So I left it, of course. Right?
Oh, that's great. Well, you know, the way I got the beard was when I had my hip surgery, the first one. I shaved the night before surgery, and then I had to be on crutches for 6 weeks. And I was like, I didn't feel like shaving. I felt like crap the first like 15, 20 days. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to keep the beard. It's like my crutch beard, you know, like the hockey player mouth beards. And then the morning I was off crutches, I went into the bathroom and I got my trimmer out, and my wife just happened to come through. She was like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm off crutches. I'm going to shave the beard. And she was like, I think you should keep it. So I haven't been clean shaven for like 5 years.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't let a razor touch this beautiful face.
Happy wife, happy life, right?
So we're clearly the opposite in terms of marital advice. Clemsen's following his wife's command. Marcus is doing the opposite.
Now let me clarify, because I will follow it before this ends. Right. So like right now she can't go anywhere.
Yeah. It's more of like an annoyance. It's not like she hates it or she's embarrassed.
Yeah,
by it.
right.
When you guys go on
once we go in public, then I'll have to get rid of it.
As soon as she's back on the street, you're going to be clean shaven again.
Exactly.
Hey, you're gonna have to be, because you married up, my man. You can't.
Oh, for sure.
You can't go out in public like that. Oh, shout out to Mrs. Hoehn.
Yeah.
That's right. Katie's a saint. She's a saint. She loves me. I don't know why.
I told you, Clemsen, I can't talk to this guy for 50 minutes without breaking out laughing. That's beautiful. You can soup my soul.
my eyes are watering. Oh, it's good. Good. And I appreciate you guys having me on. You know, it's good to talk wrestling, right? I think that's normal, right? It's healthy, but it's good. It's a couple of us from the motherland. And, when you got a long time, we knew each other in high school. So I had some battles with a Farmington stud back in the day. And so it's good to see you guys' faces, and glad y'all are healthy and your families are doing good. So hope that continues, and I'd be happy to come on anytime you guys want to have me. So thanks.
Yeah, we'll have you back on in the fall, man, for sure. Like when we do the preseason show, and kind of get your summary of the Big Ten and where your guys fit in, because you'll probably have some studs that are good but won't start in the rankings yet. And you can kind of tell us a couple guys to keep an eye out for and stuff like that. For
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on.
Appreciate you guys.
We'll shut it down. Thank you guys so much.
See ya. Peace.
Marcus, you will take a quick, we want to thank our sponsors real quick. We just named them off real quick. Pure and Clean. We want to thank those guys. Resolite, Matt Company, and Grit. Those guys all support us, and right now, especially if you're working from home and you've got, you're getting ready to get back out there, and especially for your workouts, Grit, Pure and Clean, all those ways to stay clean and stuff like that. And Resolite, if you got home mats, keep those mats clean. I've got home mats over here, and getting back to, I think I told you this, Marcus, I'm going to do some jiu-jitsu here at the end of the year, kind of getting back in to do that, and then doing some workouts here at the house. So we want to thank all those guys. Before we bounce, anything else you got for us, my man?
No, I think we have one of my kids' parents is putting a wrestling room in their basement. They're building a new house. So I think that I got 4 rolls of Resolite coming to my academy, because he asked if we could have it delivered at the business address because the shipping was cheaper. I said, heck yeah, man. So drop them off at my place. You may only get 3 of them back. But
and give them some Pure and Clean to keep those mats clean for sure.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Alex Clemsen, for jumping on the show. We'll speak to y'all next week.